All right, all right, all right. Let's get fired up here.
Maximum freedom. Read.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom. Read Rothbard.
Well, hello and welcome to the Actual Anarchy podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about movies from a Rothbardian and Anarcho-Capitalist perspective. And tonight is our 4th of July versus special, on which we'll be serving some shark fin chowder. It is, of course, the 4th of July, and it wouldn't be the 4th of July unless we brought back our friend Snobby Bobby of the Not For Everyone podcast. He joined us 1 year ago to do the Mel Gibson classic, The Patriot, and we will have him back on for this show. But first, I got to check in with Robert, and I got to say the signature line. Robert, get out of the water.
Daniel, hello everyone. They said it couldn't be done, but I have invented a new thing. You'd think in 2021 all the things had been invented, but it took necessity, the mother of invention. It's now 112 degrees, and we're doing Jaws this week, and I thought, you know what? Let me go down there, and I will just combine swimming and podcasting for swimcasting, and I'll be in the history books for inventing a new thing. I'll be cooler because I got all this water. It's like a bathtub. It's warm and full of pee. It's fantastic, and we'll see how long this battery lasts on this phone, but hopefully you can hear me loud and clear. And I'm always excited to have Bobby on. He's a great guy.
Yeah, we do hear you loud and clear. We also hear the dog barking and the children playing, and I think that will play right into the Jaws episode here as they scramble onto the beach to get away from the pranksters pretending to be a shark, only to...
That's all there would be here, unfortunately, unless I've been lied to my whole life and there are sharks in lakes. There are fish in lakes, and sharks are just big fish, so why not? You know, go crazy with it.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. And one of the victims is a dog. So I guess by that rationale, anytime there's a film where a character kills a dog, they are instantly the villain and hated by the audience. Therefore, ergo, we hate Jaws because he kills a dog in this movie.
Do we hate the movie or just the character? Because I thought the movie was actually pretty good, Daniel.
Well, it's the trope of anyone who kills a dog in a movie, you hate that character, not necessarily the movie. There's plenty of great movies with dead dogs. This being
well, I don't know. Would this movie be the same if you replace the mechanical shark with like a cartoon shark? Because I thought that the mechanical shark looked pretty terrible.
So you want to see like Baby Shark eating the dogs and the children and the lady?
Or just somebody with like a Muppet shark going nom 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 nom.
All right. Well, I don't want to burn too much more
everybody's
content.
Screaming and pretending it's real. That would be hilarious.
Let's not burn too much more content while you are out there getting your sunburn on as you continue your quest into joining the Tannerite clan, as you mentioned last week when we did the Birdcage with the great James Gentleman of Blackbird. And we are going to introduce the great Snobby Bobby of the Not For Everyone podcast right after these messages from ourselves. Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Paul Johnson and I are the Last Nighters. You can find us at lastnighters.com and also on the Liberty Movement's YouTube channel. This episode is going to be a 4th of July special, and we're going to have our friend Snobby Bobby. He joined us last year for The Patriot for the 4th of July. This year, it's going to be the great Steven Spielberg flick Jaws. And this is going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a film that finally the stars have aligned where Robert and Bobby and I are hopefully going to all agree that we enjoy a film. Bobby's been on for The Patriot. He's been on for Contact, and he was also on for Big Trouble in Little China, and he's making a triumphant return tonight for Jaws. Welcome back to the show, Snobby Bobby. I'm putting you on main screen, and this episode, what is it anyway? 184 of the show, so find show notes and more at lastnight.com/184. Snobby Bobby, tell us about yourself and where we can find what you do.
Let's not memory hole the Demolition Man episode, even though we do like to memory hole that when it comes to the relationship that Robert and I, aka on this episode, Alan Quartermain, are creating. So it's great to be back with you, Daniel and Alan Quartermain. I like his straw fedora. I wish it was leopard print around the what do they call that? The little belt around the hat there. What was the question, Daniel?
What do you do? Where can we find you? And you got any other projects or things you want to plug?
Yeah, I'm the host of the Not For Everyone podcast. It's if you like movies and film, which I assume you do, watching The Last Nighter / Actual Anarchy. I would like to refer you over to our show if you like movies and film, and then also just juvenile humor and politically incorrect, edgy stuff. We try to fight the tyrants of cancel culture and
the patriarchy.
And the patriarchy and the speech code of this dystopian nightmare that we're living in now. But at least we can put on straw hats and sit in a lake and podcast. So there's give and take in the world, I guess.
Right. Well, and Robert, I think with the size of that hat, you're going to need a bigger boat.
You know why it's so damn hot, Daniel?
Climate change, man-made climate change. I've seen all the articles. Don't try to convince me otherwise.
Capitalism and the patriarchy. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yes. I'm glad I'm on the right show tonight, guys.
You're on the right side of history, Bobby.
I'm on the right side of history, sitting here in my room, haven't left in over a year. And then also I work very closely with Buck Johnson and now Thaddeus Russell over at Renegade Media and Renegade University. I'd like to shamelessly plug those guys, Counterflow podcast, and then of course the legendary Thaddeus Russell on Unregistered, and also Renegade University, which I've been taking some classes in, and you guys might be in the freedom libertarian ilk, and you've probably heard his show and heard him talk about it. If you haven't checked it out, it exceeds expectations. It's highly recommended. I'm currently taking a class with Daniel McCarthy about the history of conservatism.
Well, that sounds downright interesting, Bobby. So I want to put show notes at lastnighters.com/184. We want links to your show. We want links to Renegade University. If you've got a promo code or anything like that, affiliate link, send it my way. We will also have a couple of things related to this particular film that I think we're going to be discussing in just a few moments here. But I do appreciate you making the time to come back on with us. Not only is it a day early because of the heat and Robert's lack of air conditioning, therefore he created podcast swimming or swimcasting, I think was the right word. So, he's creating things. Unlike me, all I do is criticize things. I don't create anything like inward singing or swim casting. Anyway,
when I first arrived here and I saw Robert on the old inner tube there, I thought to myself, is Robert a floral board shorts guy? And then I thought, no, I think he's more of a cut-off denim guy, but not unexpected, but surprisingly at the same time, he is just a regular black nylon-y swimsuit swim trunks.
Yeah, if he was going the other way, we would have been doing Deliverance.
Can I make that my green screen background?
Anyhow, why don't we get started with this bad boy? I'm going to pull up what we call the Google description, and I usually set this up beforehand, but I have been way behind on things, so let's see if I can get this to do it in real time. Let's see. I'm going to add it to the stream and enhance. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, here we go with the Google description, which, I almost forgot. What's the movie we're talking about tonight, Roberts?
Wow.
That's right. It's Jaws,
Nice,
everyone.
nice
Jaws.
title card, Daniel. I like it.
Thank you. I'm doing what I can. Doing what I can here. All right. So Google description. Let's go. It is Jaws from 1975 by the great Steven Spielberg. It has an 8 out of 10 on IMDb, 98% Rotten Tomatoes, 87% Metacritic, and 88% of Google users dog whistled it. The description reads, when a young woman is killed by a shark while skinny dipping near the New England tourist town of Amity Island, Police Chief Martin Brody, played by Roy Scheider, wants to close the beaches, but Mayor Larry Vaughn, played by Murray Hamilton, overrules him, fearing that the loss of tourist revenue will cripple the town. Ichthyologist, I'm making that up, Matt Hoover, played by a young Richard Dreyfuss, and grizzled ship captain Quint, played by the great Robert Shaw, offer to help Brody capture the killer beast, and the trio engage in an epic battle of man versus nature. Release date June 20, 1975, directed by Steven Spielberg on a budget of $9 million, spawned numerous sequels, and this kicked off the trend of the summer blockbuster. Robert, your opening salvo, please.
Well, it's kind of ironic. You have a politician who wants to keep things open so that commerce can happen, as opposed to these days, politicians like to shut things down and exert their authority, power over people. It's quite the reversal. I suppose capitalism gets blamed regardless of which happens, even when it's politicians doing one thing or another. But yeah, the movie is it's a classic. You can see why it spawned like infinite monster. Well, there were monster movies before Jaws, but you had all kinds of, Piranha. You had all kinds of Jaws knockoffs. You had Jaws itself, 2, 3, 3D, Jaws the Revenge. I mean, you could just see why it was so successful. But it's probably most successful due to, it's got a tight script for the most part, even though it's like 2 hours and 12 minutes long. You don't feel that runtime. It's got great acting. Quint is fantastic. Richard Dreyfuss is even pretty good, and that's kind of rare for him. He's okay, but I wouldn't say that, you got to go to a movie to see Richard Dreyfuss acting, because he's just amazing. He does his Dreyfussy things. And then the sheriff, he's okay. He's serviceable. I'll say he's serviceable. He's more of an everyman sheriff as opposed to any kind of like distinguishable character. But it would be, you'd have to go back and look at movies before Jaws to really appreciate, I think, the impact that it had, because we kind of take it for granted, all the things that we get out of this movie. I can't name for certain all the things that we get, but it really set a different tone, I want to say. And I don't know. I just think we're better off that Jaws is in the world than not, as far as film buffs go. So I think that the allegory to capitalism failing, it's kind of silly, what with modern day happenings going on. But I don't know, man. I'm just happy to be on a lake in 112-degree weather, floating in the water, talking to you on a magical phone, and swim casting to all you great people.
Well, clearly capitalism has failed if you can swim cast.
Exactly.
You can't build those iPhones if you close down the beaches for an occasional shark attack.
That's right. But I think this has got all kinds of fun little moral questions. I mean, was the mayor right to keep things open? Was the all that stuff? Those will be some fun questions to tackle.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I kind of like that you brought up the whole politicians wanting to keep things open, where it's kind of the reverse in this in the reality of an issue. And I wonder if the political class and bureaucrats in the current crisis were thinking of themselves as the Roy Scheider character from Jaws, where they're the ones sounding the alarm, and then it was Orange Man Bad who was just ignoring them and wanting to keep the economy open and all of those things, so that they viewed themselves heroically resisting the political or the totalitarian president at the time, and they were trying to sound the alarm and be the Roy Scheider character to be the hero here. But ironically, it seems as though now they were doing that and pumping up numbers however way they could, incentivizing, classifying things as a certain category versus not, incentivizing that in many different ways, monetarily, and also in stoking up mass media fear and things like that. But now that there's a quote unquote solution out there, they seem to be minimizing those things and juicing the stats in the other direction, to where they are now doing the exact opposite. It just happens to be something that in their crony friendship relationships, where they can shutter entire economies and destroy trillions of dollars in value, so that a couple of select crony companies can then make billions of dollars. It doesn't seem like a very fair trade to me. But Bobby, let's go to you for your opening take on our opening take, and anywhere you want to take us in this film discussion tonight on Jaws.
Well, unfortunately, Roy Scheider's character of Brody did not have the PCR test to see if these were legitimate shark attacks. And here's my opening diatribe here. And I will say, Robert, based on your opening comments, I feel like we're going to gel real well tonight. It's going to get real weird.
Real chummy. Possible. Chummy.
Yeah. Oh,
chum it up.
One. God damn, that's good. That was good. Why didn't I think of that? All right. Though I've seen this movie my entire life, until 2 nights ago, I hadn't sat down and watched it from beginning to end in about 20 years. Upon this realization, I was anxious for disappointment. Would I find it aged or stale? Inviting an uninvited internal conflict between nostalgia goggles and 30-something jaded subconscious asking, is Jaws as good as we like to think it is? I'm happy to report I stamped out this paranoia about 3 minutes into the runtime. Jaws is a watershed moment in both Spielberg's career and in commercial filmmaking in general. Some credit it as being the first blockbuster. I would probably maybe argue that perhaps Planet of the Apes is a contender as well, but I mostly agree. Throughout the 50s and 60s, we saw pop cinema markets flooded with every variety of cartoon cowboys, womanizing international spies, supernatural monsters, and allegorically Soviet space aliens. But one theme that seemed to have fell by the wayside, maybe since Moby Dick, was reimagined and sometimes accidentally brilliant by writer Peter Benchley, Carl Gottlieb, and the up-and-coming director Steven Spielberg. And that theme is man versus nature, and not just nature, not just earthquakes or volcanoes or Dante's Peak. I'm talking about real deal animal predator nature. This movie is not only a prime example, but the prime example of a young 70s filmmaker accidentally catching lightning in a bottle, paying their dues to the movie gods, and unintentionally setting a profound new precedent for filmmaking. Does Jaws hold up? Tune into Actual Anarchy to find out.
Wow, that's pretty good, man. I think that we should add some written content to our website and commission some articles out of you.
All right, I'm down.
But yeah, that's a nice open, and I understand why.
What would Hoppa say about Beverly Hills Cop?
That is not a good movie.
Beverly Hills Cop 3. That'd be so funny if you guys could get him on to do that.
Oh man,
Anyway, sorry. Go
that'd be a
ahead.
dream come true. But
Good dream.
we're living the dream right now, having you on, Snobby Bobby. Yeah, I like your take on this, and I understand why when I said, "Hey, could you move it up a night for the recording?" You're like, "Well, I'm still preparing, and I don't know if I'll be ready in time." So it seems like you maybe only got partway through your essay there.
Well, let me burst your bubble. That's literally all the notes I have for this conversation. So let's, I'm just along for the ride now.
All right. Well, that's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. No, so I kind of want to go back a little bit to the concept of likening the current world problem with Jaws and it representing a problem that we see how a government and a community reacts to it. And it reminds me of our conversation, Robert, with Bob Murphy when we were talking about They Live. And it might have been in the pre-show bonus content available for our Patreon supporters at lastnighters.com/Patreon. But he was talking about how when they shut down a lot of the retail businesses, grocery stores and whatnot, and only let the big players be the only place that people could go to, it cut out all the smaller shops, and it also corralled people, funneled them into a higher density of being closer together versus being dispersed, and also allowing the market and entrepreneurs to figure out how they were going to cater to their clientele and their customers based on what they thought would be the best thing to cater to those risk assessments that different people wanted to have. So you would end up having stores that have very rigorous cleaning and masking and distancing policies, and then some that are a bit more relaxed and others that don't require those things at all. And people could self-segregate into whatever they were most comfortable with. That would allow for further dispersion, and also it would allow market knowledge to be gained by trial and error and experimentation and see what things worked versus what didn't, versus this top-down bureaucratic totalitarian control concept that they shoved down everyone's throat. Unconstitutionally, I might add, where we don't really see what the effects could have been had people been able to choose voluntarily what they would like to try to make something be better than otherwise. And so we lost all sorts of information and learnings that could have been available to us. And we also had one of the biggest wealth transfers in history by the connected large companies through protectionist policies remaining open and available and funneling all that business into those locations, while the middle and small family-owned style businesses were shuttered completely. So I know that doesn't have a lot to do with Jaws, but I wanted to get it out there because I thought it was really interesting. And I meant to say at the beginning, in Jaws, they say, "Get out of the water," when they're like saying there's like a panic or something to be worried about. Well, back when the current world problem started happening, they were like, "Get out of the grocery store. It's dangerous to go get groceries. You got to wipe everything down," and all of that. So, Robert, I want to see if you can riff on that at all, and then maybe steer us back toward the movie, if you will.
Well, you're right that there has been data lost. If they had allowed people to operate according to their own ideas, the market would have been infinitely innovative in its approach at a solution and cater to all levels of the market, as you are correct. But we do have some information. A lot of places were way more open or didn't shut down at all compared to places that did. And we can compare those two places. Like South Dakota, Florida was largely more open. Georgia and Texas have been more open. Some of the Norwegian countries have been more open. And we can compare those to places that shut down. And they're probably, and I think as I recall, I don't have the data in front of me, but those places did just as well, if not better, than the places that all locked down. I mean, I think New York and California were the most locked down, and those were some of the worst places. I mean, those are also some of the more densely populated, and most of the deaths came from the cities, mostly due to governmental meddling, throwing sick people in with old people. That's a recipe for basically murder. But yeah, I just like that no matter what a politician ends up doing, capitalism gets the blame. This is a failure of the market, even though you can't call it a market action at all. And even with the Jaws movie, the fact that the mayor says, no, we're keeping this place open. Well, I guess he's not forcing businesses to close, but they are hiding information. Just like in today's life, they hide information, they obfuscate, they change the information to suit their narrative or their agenda the best. In Jaws, the mayor with his lackey, the coroner, they look at the shark victim, and they're like, this is a boating accident, even though there's all these teeth marks, and it takes like the marine biologist guy like 10 seconds to diagnose that it was a shark attack, maybe even less. I mean, he just looks at it, glances at it, and he's like, this is obviously a shark attack. So this is completely realistic, this movie, the way the government behaves. I mean, it would be more realistic probably if the mayor shut everything down and then stood up and said, look at me, I'm the hero for saving you from the evil shark attacks. That'd be more in line with 2020 and 2021. But it does show how government will keep information from the public that would have been very, very handy. I don't know if they necessarily have a moral obligation to inform the residents of the town that there was a shark attack, but I would have appreciated the information had I had gone to that beach that day or even lived in that area. I would like to know. So this is all solved with the market. If the beach was private, they could easily punish the beach owner for not sharing the information. The incentive is fairly similar. Like, everybody doesn't want their kids getting killed by a giant shark. So maybe the reaction to a shark attack, or maybe they'd have better shark defenses or better shark hunters. I think it's funny that the government in the movie goes to the private sector to save them from the shark. They hire Quint, a private actor, to save them as an expert in shark hunting, because that's what government does. They hire people with taxpayer dollars to do things that need to be done.
I don't know if there's a lot of pork barreling when it comes to shark hunters. But yeah, I agree. There's a reason why I suggested this film, because I think it is kind of a fun allegory to compare and contrast to the last year. And there were actually like memes and stuff online comparing guys like DeSantis or Greg Abbott to the mayor from Jaws. Everyone's going to get killed. And what this really all boils down to is, like you said, what direction do we want to go as far as allowing the private sector to react, allowing individuals to calculate their own risk assessment, the flow of information, the flow of accurate information, all that stuff. So I don't know if this is a fair comparison, but if you take into consideration that statistically sharks are responsible for 6 deaths a year, so we have a situation in which someone dies from a shark attack. There might be some squabbling over whether or not to close that particular beach down in which that shark attack happened. But if we apply this to what we've experienced in the last year, there's squabbling about there's a shark attack. Let's close down all the beaches and not let people leave their beach houses. Right.
All around the world.
All around the world. There's a shark attack in Florida, so shut down every beach everywhere.
And granted, that's kind of a cartoonish like portrayal or comparison, because it boils down to like, well, the shark's not contagious. The shark doesn't infringe on The shark's not a zombie. If a shark bites a person, it doesn't turn into a shark zombie person that can bite other people and spread the zombie shark virus. So there's a little bit of separation there, but I think ultimately what it boils down to is, like I said, is like the flow of information in allowing people to assess their own risk. And even, I was thinking about this too. It's like, yes, you might detract some tourists to your town if you happen to mention that there's a shark attack or there was a recent shark attack. But I don't think that would be so profound as to like perhaps even destroy the local economy. Because I think when I go to the beach, like I don't really get in the water that much. Like I might dip my toe out there. And if I was aware that, yes, shark attacks are something that happened, though there are only about 5 or 6 of them a year, I'm going to take my chances. What side of the beach is the giant shark on? How close am I to that? There's all kinds of variables here that you can consider. But I think that what's fun about this show is we can pick apart that situation ad nauseum to the point where I think Steven Spielberg and the writers of this movie would be nauseous listening to us do this. So
that describes just about every episode that we do. But it sounds like you're referencing the critique by Slavoj Zizek. I'm totally butchering his name, but he had a video or an essay that he discussed Jaws as an allegory for capitalism and all the different trappings and problems that were inherent in it. And that was sort of the underlying theme and message with this movie itself. Of course, I'm going to disagree in a lot of respects, but I will post it on our show notes page because it is very interesting. And in fact, I think it was recommended to us by the great Pete Quinones of the Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast during one of his recent appearances with us, maybe on the JFK episode. But Robert, I know that you watched that as well. Do you have any, 30-second elevator pitch on what it was and what your major 2 or 3 issues with it would be?
Well, I can go back to my hazy memory of it. As I recall, the mayor was capitalism, putting profits above people, so that we're going to make a lot of money if a whole bunch of people come into this town, and having a shark, having a dangerous situation is okay. It really ignores the fact that there's risk in all life, everyday life. At one point in the movie, the bereaved mother whose son died slaps the sheriff. And you know what? I'm not against slapping sheriffs. If they deserve it, go ahead and slap the shit out of those people. I don't care. I'm not going to cry any crocodile tears for any sheriffs to get slapped, especially by bereaved mothers. But she's upset that the sheriff knew about a shark attack. Well, okay, I guess that would be information that I would want to know, although he wasn't 100% sure there was a shark attack. He was going off his experts. He was going off the science. The science told him that it was probably a boat attack. Those boats, they're always out attacking people. And so he's operating off of incomplete information. And sure, later on, it's obvious it was a shark attack. After the lady's son gets killed, clearly it's obvious to everybody that's a shark attack. But there were no witnesses to the original shark attack. So for her to get upset about that, and then it's also upset, it's all kind of dumb for them to think, well, I mean, like Bobby's point, there are only 6 shark attacks a year. However, there is always a risk whenever you go outside that you are going to be surrounded by viruses or bears or sharks. Car accidents or any kind of risk. Yes, there are percentages, and we can look at the rarity of an attack or a bad thing happening, but that doesn't mean you're immune. It just means you're rolling the dice and you are taking the odds, and you're gambling that you're not going to run into a shark on this swim trip.
Right. And there's also
So-
choices that you can make to avoid more risky areas, like going down dark alleys.
Right. And risk isn't an inherent aspect of capitalism. It's as if under socialism there would be no risk.
No
So-
food, not no risk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
As if you could just shut down the beach and there'd be no consequences, right? The argument, I guess, is that, well, if under socialism or communism, you would just shut it down and you just shut down the economy and everything's fine because we can just print money forever and there's never any bad consequences to that happening.
Or,
Wait,
or
wait, I thought
nobly redistribute it without any kind of corruption. Just like, oh, we have this slush fund reserved for these types of shark attack situations for towns when we have to destroy their economy.
Right. And you guys are, of course, talking about socialism, not present day America, right?
Oh no,
Totally
we're
different.
full on CCP infiltration at this point. Daniel.
You know, one
There,
thing that
baby.
I thought when she slaps him, obviously she doesn't know that he's the one guy who actually is aware that this might be a shark. He's the most like, yeah, this is probably a shark person out there. And in fact, he tried to close the beaches. She's not aware that he was being lied to by the bureaucratic class and the mayor with their cozy relationship and manipulating the science to manufacture the result and the information that they wanted it to say, right? When the coroner goes back and says, oh, this is a boat attack because of pressure from the mayor, that is the obfuscation. That is the manipulation of the data that goes towards the politicization of scientism or science,
Mhm.
and that creates scientism. And we see that in present day, obviously, as well. Related to the notion that there being a shark attack or six, and there's probably more than that in this movie alone, but I wonder if, now this would ruin the movie, of course, but what if you took the situation and rather than saying, oh, it's going to ruin our economy, people aren't going to come to the beach because of the shark, what if you played it up the other direction? Oh, we've got this crazy shark thing happening. Come on down, check it out. We're doing boat tours and come and see if you can spot the shark from the beach and come to town and get the 3-night stay, get the shark fin soup, whatever you want. You know, turn it around into a big publicity marketing campaign that actually increases tourist dollars into the town.
Yeah, if you had because later on in the movie, at the very end, they finally see Jaws for the first time, right? And they're like, holy smokes, that's a 3-ton, 25-foot shark.
Mhm.
That would be a marketing point for any city in the world. Would love to have something like that they could put on their marketing material.
Come see the biggest
Absolutely.
shark in the world.
Yeah, and you could get like you could like, hey, don't get in the water if you don't want to. There's a big shark out there, but we're gonna try to conjure it up in some way. We're gonna drop a bunch of like chum and like, things into the water to see if we can get you to see the like when you go on a dolphin tour, but in this case it's a gigantic shark. And Daniel, based on your twisting your pitch there, I would like to hire you for my public relations department one day when I am an entrepreneur.
You're going to turn that frown upside down, my man.
Yeah, baby, it's all perspective.
So it's funny.
I think
Doom don't
places
pay the
like
bills.
SeaWorld and Jurassic Park have proven that people would love to see something like that. And what could go wrong?
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned this. My wife and I, we went to the Bahamas before we got married, and we did do one of those dolphin tours, and we also did a jet boat, speedboat tour out to some of the other islands in the Bahamas. And at one of these like little K things or whatever they are, they had us all get in the water, and they had some handlers come out, and they were attracting stingrays and sharks and bringing them up close to us. So we've got photos of the guys like putting bait out and getting the sharks like on this like hook thing and pulling them up out of the water and showing us. Now, the ASPCA is probably pissed off about this, but it's not their jurisdiction or whatever. But it was pretty freaking awesome. and we were right next to the sharks and everything, and it was like a draw. You know, it was like a cool thing to go and check out and see. And I know, Robert, when you went to Thailand, you had a similar experience with tigers, and you're still alive.
Allegedly I am alive. Yeah, there was a picture of me laying on a tiger. It's an amazingly large animal that could have ripped my head off if it wanted to.
Siegfried and Roy style.
Yeah, people actually hang out with
love
those
those
things. I
fellas.
mean, imagine how ferocious a house cat is. Then multiply that by 100. It was outrageously huge.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
And you ran a risk assessment, a personal cost benefit analysis, and decided, hey, this is worth the experience. And you're
There were
fine.
two guys. There were two guys holding on to this cat. That cat could have thrown those two guys off like toothpicks and munched my head off. But it was satiated. It was just chilling. And I was not the first one to climb up on the thing, so I felt okay. But
Wait, were
as
you
soon
doing
as I
like?
felt-
Were
as
you
soon
like
as I
He-Man
felt
on
on
Battle
Cat?
Cat? Yeah.
That's
Battle
right.
Cat.
That's right. It was exactly like that. As soon as I felt like its heartbeat, I was like, I felt it was very much a predator-prey situation, and I very much felt like prey in that moment. And I wanted to get off that thing. I was like, hurry up, snap the picture. I'm getting out of here.
So was its heart like thump, thump, thump? It's like nice
Oh,
and
yeah.
rhythmically slow, and you were like da 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 da. Like a
I
little
was just
rabbit.
so impressed by how large and powerful those things are. I can imagine the same thing with a shark. I've been to the zoo. You know, I've seen like beluga whales swim around, but it's not the same as touching these monstrous things. I don't know, man.
All right, so
Anyway.
Bobby, you got any more comments? I could take us in another direction.
Yeah, just I think what this boils down to on this kind of theme of this part of the conversation is personal responsibility and risk assessment, what you're willing to indulge in voluntarily, and accountability. So as we know that it is obviously easier to hold the private sector accountable than, say, a monopolist institution on coercive violence known as the state. So I mean, I don't know. What I'm starting to realize now too, and I know it's not a profound realization, but like people just want to be told what to do, man. They just want to be instructed, and you better get it right. And even if you don't, they were all in on being told what to do. And, you know, a lot of these people are like, well, you know, we stood together as one and tackled this global shark pandemic. And it's just like, there's like, it's almost like, okay, we give general population too much credit as to be able to assess these situations the way we would, because they're just a bunch of lemmings that need to be like guided in one direction or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the last year has been media sensationalism and agenda, government agenda, corporate agenda, all kinds of things that have kind of muddied that water and made me lose faith a lot in what we philosophically, like as individuals, hold to be preferable. But again, it just boils down to like what is the better outcome in these situations? Do we let a corrupt bureaucracy call the shots that cannot be held accountable, or do we let people figure it out and let the private sector provide what it can for these situations, whether that be flip it on its head, make it a PR attraction, or just genuinely say, hey, we'd love to have you come out to our beach community for 4th of July. However, as you may have read in the news, there was a shark attack recently. You know, swim at your own risk.
Yeah, I think there's a lot.
There's only 6 per year.
There's a lot to be said for that. And also with the Lemming class or NPC class, which of course is a demonstration of democracy failing and failing big time, because it then enables the political and bureaucratic class to have political clout and political pull to infringe on individual choice and voluntary non-coercive actions. But related to that, the people who want to be told what to do, they want to be told by someone who's doing something, quote unquote, something, because, and this is a political problem. You can't sit there and do nothing, because then you catch hell for that. You have to do something. And if that something that you're doing doesn't solve the problem, you can say, well, I didn't have enough power, money, or authority to do it the right way. So therefore, I need more money, power, and authority the next time this comes around. Or if they do too much, basically they come out smelling like a rose no matter what. They have to be doing something. They can't just leave it alone, because if they do nothing, they get blamed for doing nothing.
That's ultimately the problem. I mean, I think that was beautifully put. It's ultimately the problem of just even old school and modern progressivism is like, oh, the state's there to like call the shots, and we give them resources, and utopian society, like they're there to with the best interest of the public in mind, blah blah blah. And that's ultimately the delusion. What I've come to realize here is that collectivists or people on the left or liberals, or whatever you call it, they're so invested in the entire foundation and crux of their ideology is based around faith in the institution, because that's everything. And as soon as the institution fails, that's when they have no other choice but to double down in that situation, because they have, again, their entire worldview or what they consider noble or moral or whatever is that the collective needs to take care of the downtrodden or nobly, rescue the masses and take care of the public, blah, blah, blah. And there's a complete disconnect there with like, okay, here's my intention of my philosophy, or here's my intention of how I think the world should work versus how the world actually does work. So they cut off that second order thinking. There's no like, what are the results of this? It's like, oh, well, like we needed to defer to the institutions because what other choice did we have? And the institutions are a necessary protection of the general public. And my ideology's like completely, it's completely blinding to the nefarious or corrupt or disadvantageous or like negative outcomes of these decisions through the bureaucracy, unless it's politically convenient and Orange Man Bad is in office, and then I'm going to start calling out all the stuff that we would call out across the board, right?
Right. And then anytime there is a failure, not only is it, well, you didn't give me enough power, money, or authority, or staff, or whatever, but it's also conveniently capitalism's failure.
Yes,
as Robert was pointing out earlier.
Yes, and that's what's really, really disconcerting is like, and I don't know what else to, I guess you could use the term free market, but I don't think people that aren't into this shit really know what that means either. But like, and capitalism is it's basically a Marxist term, right? If I'm not mistaken, the capitalist, the predator class, or whatever you want to say. But people think that capitalism is inflated government power they think that it's just inflated, markets, or not inflated markets. That's the wrong way to put it, but like the corruption of like the predator guy with the mustache and the monocle
and the money and the influence over
right.
the political class buying the political system.
Right, exactly. But there's a complete disconnect with that political system part. Like they don't understand that like they maybe acknowledge it, but they don't understand that like the inflated government apparatus plays just as big a role, if not more. What we call crony capitalism, or what we're living in right now, is literally like a fascistic economy where you're what do they call it? You got barriers of entry for small businesses, and then you just have these like Lewis Black has said in the past with the Enron thing. It's like we realized with Enron that it's just two big dogs just fucking each other, both getting something out of it, to quote Lewis Black. But yeah, but again, like what I was saying, these collectivists, these like people that are asleep or lemmings are not really paying attention, they're into like the theoretical intention of the state or the public institution. They have no ability to reconcile the actual outcome of it.
Right. Yeah. They're headline readers. If the bill is named something good, therefore it is good, or the intention behind it is good. They, of course, don't see
I'm
the
a patriot because the Patriot Act.
Right. And they, of course, don't see the corrupt nature of just the political system in and of itself. But then they go and say that, well, the rich are buying political influence. Well, I forget who I can attribute this quote to, but politicians sell political favors to the rich because or the rich buy political favor from the politicians because the politicians have political favors to sell. I think I butchered that
Exactly.
enough. But basically, that's the system in and of itself allows them to have the ability to be corrupt. And had that system not been in place, then that level of corruption is no longer possible.
Or yeah, if you just dial back their power in general, the only people they have to answer to is the market or the people. I mean, this is like 101 shit, but you know what I mean? Like, these people don't understand this though. Like, no one wants, like, people that don't that are not of our ilk will not put this together. And that's ultimately the issue with kind of our philosophy, is like, it takes a lot of work to kind of get here.
You got to think 2 or 3 levels deep, maybe more.
Mm-hmm. And
Not
a lot
just
of people
one,
are just
1.5.
incapable of doing that or uninterested. Like, I don't give a fuck about ballet. You know, I'm not going to sit there and debate with somebody about ballet that's clearly more qualified to comment on ballet. And I'm not saying I'm qualified to comment on economics, but I'm definitely more qualified to comment on it more than like the average Joe, right? Because I've read like 4 books on economics, you know, so it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, that's all it really takes. It's like, oh, you already got the job. But that's ultimately, I think Michael Malice has talked about this before, is like, if you're not an expert on, or not, I hate to use the word expert because that's such a tainted term now, but if you're not someone that's informed on a particular topic, like, you should not have a remnant of an opinion on it.
Yeah.
Just
or any influence on policy or what's going to happen related to that thing that you know nothing about.
And that goes back to democracy, the god that failed. People are ultimately kind of dumb, and we give. And I'm not a fascist. I'm not into like a dictatorship, obviously, but like, you
maybe
have
a
to
benevolent monarchy.
Yeah, I'm moving in that direction by the day, it seems.
Yeah.
Reactionaryism, post-libertarianism.
I'd like to shift us to a cultural reference or homage to Jaws, and that is the works of Kevin Smith, also who does a lot of lefty critiques, progressive critiques of capitalism. And one of his strongest movies, I think, is Mallrats, in which he names the main characters T.S. Quint and Brody Bruce. So he's literally using the Jaws characters' names.
I've never put that together.
And he makes numerous references to Jaws. T.S. Quint is going to propose to his girlfriend at Universal Studios when Jaws pops out of the water. In Clerks, there's the reference to Salsa Shark. You were mentioning in the pre-show bonus content available for Patreon supporters that in Chasing Amy, they are doing the comparison of the various injuries and scars that they have acquired through sexual escapades in Chasing Amy, whereas it's man versus nature in the comparison between Dreyfus and Quint in Jaws. Which, Robert, you were saying earlier that Quint is an amazing performance in this, and I would agree. He's both charming and also kind of frightening. You know, he's kind of all over the place. He's like singing at one point, and then he just drives that engine to failure for seemingly no reason. And he's got this class conflict with the working class hero and the university rich kid snob Dreyfus kind of going on. But I found that there was a very interesting dynamic in the characters and how they kind of played off of each other, and each one sort of brought something different to the story.
Yeah, absolutely. You got this classic trio. It's like a buddy cop movie, but there's three of them there. Where you got the straight-laced guy who doesn't like the water, who barely even been on a boat before, and then you got the water guy who makes a living on the water, but yet he's had this horrific experience with all his comrades being eaten by sharks, so he's made it as like his life's mission to hunt the things down and kill them all. And then you get this marine biologist who is just fascinated and wants to know everything about these things. It's a fantastic trio. You could have an entire sitcom series or adventure series with these characters. You could bring in some love interests. You could have them go on all kinds of different adventures. But this is like the classic tropey adventure trio that is rife for interesting dialogue and connections to be made among these characters. It's fun what they accomplish in 2 hours and 12 minutes. Even though I still think Quint's the standout, I do appreciate the other characters and what they were able to do with their screen time.
Yeah, and one of the other things I really liked, and then Bobby, will go to you, is the scene where Brody's on the beach, and he keeps thinking there's a shark, and he's like seeing the kids screaming and things happening, and it's like it's building all this tension the whole time, and then when the shark is finally like realized that it's there, there's that great zoom dolly shot that happens where they're zooming and dollying at the same time. And so it like it maintains Brody's apparent size, but then the background expands behind or sinks in behind him. It's like so cool and well done.
Yeah,
I really enjoy that.
That's an old Hitchcock trick from Vertigo, and I believe Scorsese's used it before, among other people. But there are two shots in this movie I feel are most iconic, and one of them is that one with the I think sometimes they call it the Zolly shot, where they cheekily combine zoom with dolly, and then the other one is where Brody's just kind of casually throwing chum out into the ocean, and then it's such a brilliant jump scare, and it's such a brilliant jump scare because accidentally, here's a little trivia, this movie was supposed to show the shark a lot more than it does. There was happy accidents as far as getting the shark to work, and they had to do a lot of things in this film on the fly and kind of ebb and flow and roll with the punches, things like that. And one of those major things that makes this such a great movie, because if you showed the shark the entire film and didn't just show kind of remnants of the shark or like little shadows of the shark, and granted, the characters elevate this film too, but ultimately you would have kind of a Roger Corman schlock, man versus nature film. The 10 to 20 that came in the next 6 years after this, Piranha, Alligator, Orca, things like that Robert was mentioning earlier. But
Deep
the point
Blue
is,
Sea, a shark ate me.
I mean, snakes on a plane. Like the list is endless, right?
Sharknado.
As much as we can attribute Jaws to creating such great film after Jaws, we can also attribute it to just lighting the fuse for a lot of shit too.
And Shark Week.
But fun shit. But I guess what I was getting at is like
Baby Shark.
They realized halfway through production. By the way, this production was an absolute nightmare. Nobody had faith in this film. Spielberg thought he was done while he was making it. He didn't even stick around for the last shot of the movie. He's like, my career's over. Dreyfuss went on television and actually like started to backpedal, talk about how like before it was released, he was like, this movie, it's nobody's fault, but it is what it is, like kind of that kind of thing. But what happened was the mechanical shark didn't work as well as they wanted it to. By the way, they're shooting all on real ocean for authenticity and things like that, which is more or less never been done to this magnitude. And because the shark malfunctioned, the mechanical shark or the puppet shark malfunctioned so much, they had no other choice but to have it be this lurking thing in the background for like the first 2 acts of the movie.
Right. A lot of allusions to a shark.
A lot of that, and a lot of the audience kind of filling in the gaps, things like that. And that's one of the tenets of why this movie is so praised, is because of that ambiguity. You don't want to show your monster throughout the entire film, because ultimately you're going to have your audience become conditioned to it or desensitized to it, and the final scenes and the final brilliant climaxes and character moments are just not going to have the same oomph as they would have.
Right. Yeah.
And
yeah.
This is exactly what Ridley Scott did with the original Alien movie, where you only see the alien monster for a few frames, probably in the first hour and a half, and it just elevates the terror.
And that's another old Hitchcock trick. There is build the anticipation and then maybe show your monster in the third act. Like if you look at Psycho, even then it's just like basically the silhouette of Norman Bates. So it is just that post Hitchcock, these kids in the 70s. You got your Scorseses, you got your De Palmas, you got your Steven Spielbergs. To the lesser extent, you have your George Lucases, who happen to get lucky. Growing up on this last class of brilliant filmmakers and stealing ideas from them. And we have things like Jaws. And again, this movie, like I know I was being cheeky with my opening comments, but this movie like holds up so goddamn well. It's ridiculous. And I think that the shark looks fine still. I would prefer a relatively subpar by today's standards, like puppet or mechanical shark versus some sort of like 90s era CGI deep blue sea shark or something like that, or to a lesser extent Cabin Boy, if you've ever seen Cabin Boy, which, one of my favorites. But it's just such a monumentally brilliant movie, and I think you could show this movie to any. This is ending comments, I guess, but I'll go with it. You could show this to any kid that was into movies nowadays, even like 9-10-year-old kid today, and like it stands the test of time.
No,
I'm glad you brought up the CGI, because you're right. I mean, if you these days, or at least when CGI was really becoming a thing, there is this lazy tendency to show every little last detail of everything all the time as much as you can. And you're going to paper over and CGI over any kind of like mistakes or laziness or anything like that, and you'll just fix it in post. But when you got this practical stuff and you're working with it on the set, you're going to come up with interesting ideas. You're going to be innovative instead of just shooting some stuff and then try and fix it all together and editing in post. That's why these movies hold up so well. Like the original Thing held up so well.
Yep, and it does the same thing where it holds back the monster.
Jaws. Yeah,
and you can see like the humanity in this movie as far as like the human endeavor of the filmmaking in Jaws. If you're looking for it, you can find that. And yes, maybe it doesn't look perfect in certain scenes, and maybe you're very aware that this is not a real shark, but it just oozes like ambition and hardship. Like this was a nightmare of a film. This was Spielberg paying his dues. Like it's almost like when it's the same effect as when you find a really great live album of a band you like, and a lot of live albums are absolutely terrible. For whatever reason, but like if you find that one that's just like, oh my god, Bob Dylan and the band after the flood or whatever, or like, things like that. Bob Marley, what's the one? There's a lot of good live ones that Marley did. Anyway, the point is you can pick up on the imperfections and the humanity of the aesthetic, and if you want, you can embrace that and make it so much better than it is, or you can be a sniveling cunt and be like, hey, that doesn't look very good, this movie sucks.
Yeah, I like that. Robert, this is a big thing that you like, and that's the working within constraints. Now, it sounds like from the narrative that you're providing, Bobby, that they weren't even aware that they were doing anything like that great. Like they thought they were failing. They were just doing what they could because of the challenges that were being put before them, and they were not happy with what they thought they were going to be coming out at the end of this process with. And that's often how I feel about our show. Like, usually my wife watches the show and I go in after. I'm like, I barely even know what I said. I don't know if this is a good episode or not. But then when I edit the episode and I give it a listen after the end, I'm like, hey, it wasn't that bad. It's not on the genius level of Spielberg and Jaws here, but I can totally relate with while you're crafting the thing, the whatever project you're working on, and just being so dissatisfied with it and just being like, totally removed from, this is so far off from the vision I had going into it, and just being unhappy with it. And then you come back and revisit it a little bit later, and it's like, not so bad. It actually worked out.
The story of making Jaws is almost as compelling as the story of Jaws, and I would highly recommend researching it and listening to us talk about it more on this show, and then going back and watching it, because it is that what's the word? Like it's just that rough and tumble, like up and coming director dealing with a lot of like studio bullshit. I think they were 100% over budget, just nightmare after nightmare. The boat sank at one point in real life. Another fun fact, the scene, Richard Dreyfuss's character was supposed to die at the end in the cage, right? And they actually went and shot in Australia, or they had these Australian shark experts go and get a real shark to shoot that footage, and they put a little person, can you say midget still? They put a little person in one of those cages and used a normal size shark, but they didn't, but the shark destroyed the cage before they had the opportunity to actually put the person in there. And they were like, we don't know, like, this is some of the best shark footage I've ever seen in my life. We want to use this in the movie. And they decided to just let Richard Dreyfuss live, because they didn't actually get the shots of him getting killed by the shark, but they wanted to use that footage of the real shark.
I think it works.
So now apply everything that we've just said to a government funded film about giant sharks.
I need more money. I need more staff. I need more authority.
Fire up
get
that
the shot,
printer, baby.
Get the shot how we want it to be. Now, I think it is those constraints, and it's almost like how Robert Rodriguez approaches his filmmaking, where he does a lot of practical things, and he does things like innovative to sort of account for what he can't do with money. I can't afford to do it the right way, so I'm going to do it this inexpensive way that breaks a barrier and actually makes it even better.
Yep. 100%. I've never thought of it that way, but that is dead on, because if they were to make Jaws for the first time today, it would just be focus groups, and how are we going to shoehorn wokeness into this? Is the shark non-binary? Things like give it like a little pink bangs or something. It's smoking a clove cigarette and has a.
We do never find out
tattoo.
the gender of the shark, right?
I don't think so.
Is it polite to ask? I don't even know.
It's a shark. It doesn't matter. They'll kill you whether they're male or female.
Yeah.
Well, now wait a minute. No, isn't Jaws like 2 or 3? Is it still the same shark, or is it like the son of Jaws or the whatever?
Yeah, there's some where you get into the kids of Jaws, but who knows if it's the son of Jaws,
the mother of the
the mother. Yeah,
Well, Brody blows up.
I'm sure
Jaws
it's out
pretty
there
good.
somewhere.
Brody blows up Jaws pretty good in this one, but I haven't seen Jaws 2 or 3, so I don't know if there's like this mangled shark that.
Don't bother with that.
It's like in The Great Outdoors when with John Candy, and there's the bear that's been shot in the head, so it's bald.
It has like a little flat top. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, speaking of this happy accident, do you think that? I mean, you said it's a Hitchcockian thing to sort of build up this tension and not show too much of your villain and your monster until near the end, and that's really all they could get because the mechanical shark kept failing and not working, so they could only get so much footage. Do you think that they kind of like accidented themselves into that Hitchcockian kind of style unintentionally?
In a lot of ways, yes, because for example, when they realized the example you just gave, when they realized that the shark, I mean, Spielberg's on in interviews talking about this and saying, like, when I realized the shark wasn't working the way we wanted it to, I thought to myself, what would Hitchcock do? Which we should make little bracelets that say that.
Right.
But yeah, so it's a happy accident, and it's a beautiful accident, and it's again, like, researching the process of making this movie just elevates it so much more. But yeah, that's what you got to do, and that's what markets do. If we want to tie it back to economics here,
little economic lessons.
You might get a wrench in the gear from time to time, and you got to use you got to be quick on your feet, use ingenuity, and make a product. Maybe not exactly how you planned it to be, but sometimes that will spark a better one.
Right. I know with my kids, when they're like drawing something and you know, they're learning stuff and practicing, developing art skills and whatnot. And I remember when I was a kid, like I would be trying to do something and like a mistake would happen. And then I would sit there and go, okay, well, how can I incorporate this mistake into what I'm doing? And I discovered like different things that I wouldn't have intended to do originally. And
I always draw with I draw as well. I always draw with ink a lot of times just to practice that skill. It's exactly that skill. If you draw with ink and you just don't let yourself erase, you'll figure out how to kind of navigate those waters. Yeah.
All right. So I have one final comment, then we get into a final summary review. We can go with like maybe number of shark kills on this 4th of July episode. So we talked about this working within constraints and having somewhat limited operational shark footage. So Robot Chicken, which Robert, I'm sure you've seen, my wife and I started watching it. They're 10-minute episodes. It's on HBO Max, and we finished whatever we were watching before. So now we just watch 2 or 3 of those, and we go to sleep. And it's like, it's so frenetic, and it's all this stop motion animation. But in, I think, episode 16 or 17 of season 1, they have a bit about Jaws, and they say, oh, because the mechanical shark didn't work, there's all these scenes that we couldn't accomplish. And so then they recreate these missing scenes from Jaws, and they're all hilarious. It's like the shark talking and doing like stupid shit, and it's hilarious. So
Land Shark, the SNL bit where he like knocks on the door.
Yeah. So anyway, I just think that happy accidents are you can fail forward, basically, right? You can innovate by going outside of what you intended to start out with. And that's part of the entrepreneurial skill of overcoming obstacles and hurdles that get placed in front of you, and just keep pushing forward.
And if you just have some kind of all these safety nets or CGI safety net, and you're not putting yourself in those situations where you need to overcome those mistakes, then you don't learn, and you don't innovate, and you don't come up with new ideas and ways around problems and things like that. You just get lazy and you turn out shit. So I would much rather watch the original Jaws than any of its dumb sequels. I don't know, maybe a few of its sequels hold up, I don't know. But so much of that crap in the 90s when CGI was coming out, it breeds lazy filmmakers. Not to say that there aren't some good filmmakers that have good ideas, but when filmmakers just sit in a green screen, yeah, they're going off of having a good idea. They got a strong concept. They got a strong script, but they're not failing. Like when a shot goes perfectly, and then they've got the CGI guys to make it all perfect, you're not failing, and you're not innovating. You're not learning. You're not thinking of new ways around this new problem, and you're not going to shoot your brain off into this new area that you never even knew existed before you started. That's the point. It's the stuff you don't know that you don't know about until you get to that point, and you're removing that from the equation, and that's why a lot of these movies suck, and that's probably why Bobby only talks about movies from a certain time period, because they've lost something.
Yeah, and I think it might be why he walked out on our recording midstream here. Oh, now see, this actually makes the episode better that Bobby spontaneously left so we can make a joke about him being dissatisfied with this episode, but now he's come back due to some obligation because he did agree to be on our show tonight. And we can't hear him. Oh, because I muted him while he was taking a leak. There we go.
I really had to have a bio break, as they call it in other countries. So no, I feel really good about that. I feel like this is the first episode I've done with guys where we actually like dug into the themes of what we're trying to accomplish with your podcast here. So your accusation is false, Daniel. Is it final thoughts time? Sorry, I was in the can.
Yeah, we can do some final thoughts.
That's
so
where
if
I
you
do
want
my
to kick
best
us,
thinking.
yeah, let's you kick it off there, Bobby, and give it a number of shark fins in your shark fin soup, or a number of shark kills on the beach in Amity Island.
Okay. And this is off the top of my head. I don't have anything pre-written, so bear with me here. Despite the fact that Jaws sparked a barrage of awful, yet some watchable, both sequels and ripoffs within the same vein of Man versus Nature, zoom out a little bit, no pun intended, and realize that even if you don't consider Jaws to be your favorite Spielberg film, which I think that for me personally, that's kind of up for debate, you have to acknowledge that without Jaws, you don't have your favorite Spielberg film. And I'm glad that Spielberg hasn't gone that hipster mentality of like, you know how hipsters are like, it's kind of posh to be like, the Beatles suck. And you're like, what? Like, just shut the fuck up, please. But without Jaws is like the Iggy Pop of blockbusters. Like it as to what Iggy Pop did to, you don't have the Ramones or the Sex Pistols or, I don't know, any other iconic punk rock band or alternative music kind of thing. So you don't have Raiders of the Lost Ark. You don't have the Goonies. You don't have Saving Private Ryan. You don't have Schindler's List, because Jaws was what allowed the success of this movie, is what allowed those movies that you love that are Spielberg, E.T., to exist in the first place. I think it holds up on a like almost a cosmically divine level. It is not remotely boring in any spot. It is the stars aligning. It is towing the line between talent, a decent script, an incredible story of the production. And what I personally appreciate about it the most is that it takes what should be a B movie plot or idea and elevates it and gives these B movie ideas the permission to be not a B movie, if that makes sense. So it's something that is timeless, and it is not remotely overrated and is incredibly important, incredibly wonderfully violent. It's very dark. That's one thing I realized from one is this is like a lot darker than I remember. But it's the perfect balance of all these wonderful essential components into what is the summer blockbuster. Kind of like Transformers with Michael Bay. I don't like that movie.
All right, so how many canisters of oxygen are you blowing up in a shark's mouth out of 10?
Oh, 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. All right. Wow.
Yeah,
pretty,
for sure.
Pretty incredible. I am leaning that direction actually myself. I grew up and Jaws was a cultural, known entity. It was we played the Nintendo game where you're going down for the conch shells. But I don't know if I've ever sat down and really paid attention and watched Jaws until just the other day. And yeah, it is so well done. And it's a lot darker than I thought it could be. I mean, there's like severed limbs that are happening in this thing. The dog gets killed. A little kid gets killed. And it's just so well done and well paced. It's not boring at all. I like the suspense and the build up to the shark and the final confrontation. It's just so brilliant and well done, and it's certainly deserving of all the accolades that come to it. And it's interesting to hear some of the background, Bobby, about the making of the film. And another film that I think is really good and the making of is Apocalypse Now. There's actually a whole documentary about it. I want to say it's called Hearts of Darkness, something like that. We did that episode, I think, last year of Apocalypse Now. And just the making of that film, it also has a very similar kind of story where they weren't really sure what they were going to make. And then they just shot and overcame obstacle after obstacle and came out with another brilliant film. And I think Jaws is in similar company, though I don't think on the level that Apocalypse Now is, at least as far as like the amount of footage that went into it and the amount of effort and things like that. But still a really good film. So I'm going to give it 9 shark attacks on the beach of Amity Island. So that's pretty high praise for me. And we'll go to you, Robert, for your final summary and review and give it a number of shark fins in your shark fin soup.
So is Jaws still worth watching in 2021? Hell yes. It is, like you guys have said, it is far better than the sum of its parts. It's far better than it has any right to be. Like Bobby said, it is like basically your B-movie plot, but he combined all the right elements. You got your man versus nature, you got your horror, you got some marginally decent acting. I mean, fairly placeholder characters, except for Quint, who really is the standout, but it's really just the pacing, everything. One thing we haven't mentioned, and I don't know why we didn't, but I'll bring it up at this point, is John Williams' score, which is probably one of the most famous scores in movie history. Maybe it's not quite as famous as his work on Star Wars, but it's pretty dang famous. I don't know if it's like the movie that launched his career, but then he did Star Wars, 2 years later. It's understated, but it's classic. It's got it's that right haunting tension builder.
Yeah, foreboding, building.
Yeah, exactly. It just you hear it, and I'm sure when if you're watching the movie silently, which I know they do before the movie all comes together, it's probably they watch it and they're like, yeah, this probably isn't very good. But then they watch it when the score is done, all the sound effects are done, all the special effects are done, all the editing's all done and tight, and then they're like, oh, wait a minute. It actually all came together somehow. And I think that's what happened with Jaws. It's a movie that's better than the sum of its parts. It's a classic. It obviously inspired genres. All the schlock that we have gotten over the years, we all got it because of Jaws, but we also got a whole bunch of good stuff because of it. Like Bobby was saying, we wouldn't have Jurassic Park, we wouldn't have Raiders if it wasn't for this. And man, I'm glad I'm glad it exists. It's still worth watching, and I'm going to give it, same as Daniel, 9. I wanted to give a half because I like the idea of a half a swimmer, a bloody half a swimmer, but I can't. It's 9 whole swimmers, and only one swimmer got chomped in half. So there's 9 whole swimmers out of 10. Fantastic movie. Yes, sir.
Can I make one point? Because, like you said, we didn't really bring up John Williams' score. Perhaps this is an inappropriate time to bring it up, but if you notice, what's Robert Shaw's character's name again?
Quint.
The scene where in the very end, and as brilliant and necessary and elevating as the score is, the scene at the very end where Quint is the boat is getting attacked by Jaws and Quint gets eaten by Jaws. There is no music, and it is absolutely divine. It is absolutely visceral. You do not feel like you're watching a movie. Horrifying. Excellent choice not to put a score in that scene.
Well noted. I would agree. I think that helps it to stand out, especially when you have music throughout the rest of the film, to have that contrast. Like, something is different. This is climactic, and we're going to let the gravity of the scene play itself.
And then after that part's over, you kick in the adventure music, the adventure score, and Brody climbs what is that called? The mast or whatever of the boat.
To the crow's nest, yeah.
The crow's nest, and it's just like, oh God, it's just so fucking good. God, that movie's so good. I'm gonna go watch it again after this podcast.
All right. Well done, everyone. I think that we maybe have created a podcast that's better than some of its parts, our individual contributions. I usually don't feel so good about an episode, but I do feel pretty good about this one. So, Bobby, thank you so much for joining us.
What does that say about my previous appearances?
Apparently, it says a lot.
All right. I'm very insecure when I come on this show.
No, all of your appearances have been great. Otherwise, we wouldn't have you back.
All right.
But this was a really good episode, and I like the theme of Spielberg so much that we're going to stick with it, and we're going to actually do Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark next week. That's right. Sweet. Surprise, everyone. It's 40 years young, and they are actually shooting Indiana Jones 5, or they were, until Harrison Ford got injured and hurt his shoulder and had to have surgery.
He's a 9-year-old man.
I hate 2021.
He's 80 something, so I don't know if they're on a hiatus right now while he recovers from that. But Raiders of the Lost Ark is what kicked it all off. It's an excellent film, and we are going to have the great Prof CJ of the Dangerous History podcast, who also is a historian. He's a professor of history, so not of archaeology, but he's our own Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones type guy, and he's going to be on for that next week, so it should be a lot of fun.
That's
I'm dressed for next week's episode right now. I'm ahead of the game. I like it.
You look like Florida Man.
You're dressed for like a Dom DeLuise movie review right now.
So anyway, that should be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. And people can find the show notes and more for this episode at lastnighters.com/184, where you can find links to Bobby's podcast, the Not For Everyone podcast, with his co-host, Crude Rude Dude. And Bobby, why don't you just tell everyone who's listening where they can easily find your podcast and anything else. You can mention the Renegade History thing again, and we will sign off after that and get in some Patreon bonus content, which we affectionately called Kathleen Turner Overdrive.
Yeah, we are available if you want any hot takes on film beyond what the Last Nighters has to offer. Not For Everyone podcast is on pretty much all podcatchers. We don't have a video thing going. Mostly we don't have video because I have to edit out a lot of the more egregious, like really vulgar, awful things we say that I don't want in the public domain, public forum. But yeah, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, all that stuff. Not for Everyone podcast. Two cynical man children discuss pop culture and explore their flawed friendship through the lens of cult cinema. It's a lot of fun. It might be. It's not for everyone, but it might be for you.
Well, it is definitely for me. I've listened to all 100 existing episodes, and congratulations. Wow. Congratulations on getting to episode 100. Now, I say that with a caveat because I believe some of your early episodes actually aren't available. But I've listened to every available episode, and so
I'll send them to you.
Okay.
Did you start at the beginning?
I jumped around for a while, and then I just went back as far as I could, which I think was episode 7 or 8 or something like that.
I don't think we catch our groove till about episode 20, Night of the Demons, or Night of the Demon, and then we do Night of the Demons later.
Well, I really enjoyed it. I felt like it's kind of weird, but when you listen to certain podcasts and you guys have a camaraderie between the two of you because you guys are friends, and I've heard that talked about with Robert and I's show here. But you guys spend the first half of the show just berating each other, which is beautiful. But you don't even get to the movie until well into it.
I started in the show notes mentioning where the movie review actually starts. It's usually around the 45 minute. There's segments though. It's not like we're just bullshitting. Well, we are.
No,
we try to have a structure there. But you're right. I think that's worth noting is the first half of it has nothing to do with the movie that we're discussing.
But I think it's probably my favorite part. And in a way, I kind of feel like I'm in the room and sort of participating in a way, even though I'm not saying anything. But it's like I'm just sitting there on the couch, half drunk, listening to two guys like just rib each other. And it's a lot of fun.
Awesome.
So I don't know if that's any more than a ringing endorsement than I could possibly give, but I highly recommend your show.
Thank you. We got real quick. We're kind of what we're calling, now that we've done 100 episodes, we're going into what we call the master class now. So we've kind of got a lot of the kind of B movie schlock slashers and things like that out of the way. Not to say we'll never go back to that stuff, but we're getting into like weird 70s psychedelic art house shit now. That's not for everyone. And I'm anxious that we might be alienating an audience that we've already built up, but I don't care because it's my show and I want to talk about Jodorowsky and Brian De Palma and people like that, as opposed to just throwaway horror movies from the 1980s.
I like it. I actually watched A Boy and His Dog because of you.
You're welcome.
It was pretty good. I don't know if we do it on this show, but it was definitely worth a watch. But anyway, another episode that will be worth a watch is our one next week with Prof CJ as we do Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark that kicked it all off 40 long years ago. And with that, we're going to go into some Kathleen Turner Overdrive after this, and you guys can get a hold of that at lastnighters.com/Patreon. Send some money our way, and you get access to that. Any final words, Robert, before we get into that and say goodnight?
You know, in this wave of heat that is enveloping this area that I am living in, thanks capitalism, you sons of bitches. If we had socialism somehow, this would all be fixed. I don't know. They never explain exactly how, but that for some reason you wouldn't have, I guess you'd shut down all industry, right? And then you'd have zero carbon emissions, and then somehow that fixes the environment. I guess if you fall into that, and then of course, you just kill off half the planet, but nobody likes humans. I like humans. I'm on Team Human. I hope you're on Team Human. Thanks for listening to this podcast. There's a lot of fun with Bobby. It's always fun with Bobby. Sounds a little bit meh, but it is true. And come on back for Raiders. Tune into Bobby's podcast. Daniel's right. These guys actually put a whole lot of effort into their podcast. They like script stuff. They do segments that are actually well thought out ahead of time. They're not just riffing off the top of their heads and bullshitting. So if you like a
Smokey and the Bandit improv, baby.
If you like a polished experience, check out the Not For Everyone podcast. It is a good time if you like hanging with the boys.
Yeah, totally agree.
And I do.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again, Bobby. And we will have show notes and more galore on lastnighters.com/184 on our 4th of July episode on Jaws. So thank you guys, and we'll see you guys all next week with Prof CJ for Indiana Jones. Peace out, and happy 4th, everyone. Good night from last night. Oh, all right. And we got a few more minutes on the Actual Anarchy podcast here. I was muted for a moment. And that just shows how professional we do things here. This has already been an extra long episode, so I'm not sure exactly what else we should cover here. But do any of you guys have anything that we didn't mention? Because I know that the score came up very late in the episode. Is there anything else that wasn't brought up? I can think of one thing, and that is the wife being unconcerned about the son being out in the boat until she realizes that the shark is actually a threat. And then all of a sudden she turns on a dime and is like, "You heard your father, get out of the boat."
Yep, that happened. That reminded me of the inverse of that would be one time I built a tree house in my backyard, and my mother was very neurotic growing up. And she yelled at my dad when he got home from work and said, "Go take the treehouse down because the kids are going to hurt themselves." And I remember my poor father at the ripe age of like 46 or whatever, climbing up a tree, and my mother forced him to dismantle my treehouse. This is a conversation for the Psycho episode of The Last Nighters that maybe we'll do one day.
You know what? Now that you mention, I think the next episode that we have you on should be a Hitchcock film, and why not it be Psycho?
So fucking down for that.
Okay.
I can't remember. Is it okay to curse on this show? It's a little late to ask, I guess.
Yeah, too late now. I'm not bleeping that out.
All right. Dude,
Yeah, we do
All right,
curse a little bit.
One last
try to
thing from
dial it
me.
back.
I will complain about the cop being a hero character. I know this is like the super most autistic libertarian thing I can think of to do right now. But at one point in the movie, there was just a big shark attack. The cop got slapped, and he's having dinner with his wife and the biologist. And the biologist is like, "Man, we got to go cut open that shark." And so Scheider's like, "Yeah, okay, let's go cut open that shark." And the wife's like, "Can you do that?" And he's like, "I can do anything I want. I'm the chief of police."
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you know,
And then he shot an innocent man in cold blood on the side of the road. Say, "You like that? I'm the chief of police."
now of course in real life,
He was resisting.
it's not like cops are heroes, always doing the right thing. In the movie world, we are rooting for the guy. We want him. Of course, we want him to cut open the shark. That's not even a question. I thought it was a weird line from the wife. Like that would be the thing that's beyond the pale. Like, you're gonna really cut open a shark? What? Yeah, of course you're gonna go do that. Even if he's not the chief of police, you got to find out if the little boy's inside. But you know, the cops being heroes, cops being role models, cops being the POV character in a heroic movie, it loses a point for me just for that. Even though it's a fantastic film, my autistic libertarian brain is annoyed that some government asshole character guy, even if he's a nice person, is the hero in the movie.
I
And
totally,
rant.
I totally sympathize with what you're saying, but I think that it's important to be able to kind of, on some level, take those goggles off, because it's like I'm not like an ACAB guy. Like, just like in my day to day, I'm not gonna sit there and just claim every cop in the world is like, yes, they're agents of the state, which is which is a monopoly of violence, and they're the enforcement arm of that. But I'm kind of a few good apples guy for the most part. And I think that you can kind of extrapolate that in this movie with, like, I know you have the stereotypes of small town cops being just kind of like power tripping dickwads, but they're not like but like you talk to like our parents' generation, like the boomers or the boomer conservative types that are like, hey, cops are like important. And I think that enforcement of law is important, whether it be in an involuntary society or not, but it just depends on the mechanism or the protocol or the operating system that idea is placed in, and obviously it's not ideal in our real world. But I think that if you go like the kind of the decentralized route of, if you have law enforcement on a small scale, like within a small community, it's a little more dismissible or digestible, and I'm less prone to vilify that via my like libertarian principles, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes some sense. And you know, it's him and one other guy until they get the summer rush where they bring in some additional help. So they sort of do highlight the trappings of being sort of understaffed for what they're doing, and they also kind of, I think, kind of in a fun way, demonstrate how people bring just such trivial things to him constantly that he sort of has to deal with. And in a, you know, a poly legal system where there's competing justice services, you wouldn't encounter that, and you would actually have a better distribution and various levels of service that are desired, and quality levels and things like that. And so I think it would be a much better system. And so it's not like we're against law and order or having a semblance of like repercussions
Hierarchy
for bad actors and things like that, but it's that monopolized control where there's no real feedback mechanism on the market where they can get away with whatever they want. And as the size of that grows, the more atrocities can occur, basically.
Yeah, and it's not like there was a scene where Brody was like busting someone with like a dime bag or something, and you're like, fuck this guy. Like, I have to suspend my what do they call it? I have to kind of like
Your autism.
like, check that autism at the door for movies like I'm not going to watch Die Hard and be like, this guy's not following protocol. Like, he's not, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're just here to have a good time. And that's what's great about movies is on one hand, you can interpret it as like CIA status propaganda to make people rally behind coercion and force and the cops and things like that. Or you can kind of check that autism at the door and try to enjoy it outside of your stringent political philosophies, because
Right,
it is
and
fantasy.
There's one other point I'll make, and then we should wind this down because it's already a supersized 4th of Julyverse episode.
It always is, baby.
But we were talking
Wide
earlier about the masses, right? The NPC types, the lemming types. Well, they, for the most part, view cops as the good guys. And so when you're making a movie or a story, a film that's going to have a hero, you're going to utilize whatever's in the cultural zeitgeist as a hero. And so you've got, 90% of the people who are sort of like wanting to be told what to do and prefer safety and security over freedom. It makes a lot of sense that we would have a character like this be a cop and be the hero.
Well said. Well said.
But
it
yes,
makes sense. I don't have to like it.
There are a few guys that I like that are former cops. I know of 3 or 4 people who left the force after they discovered the one true philosophy of voluntarism and anti-state rhetoric that we espouse.
Wonderful.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our episode on Jaws, everyone. So we had the great Snobby Bobby of the Not For Everyone podcast on for this 241st episode of the show. You find the show notes more at actualanarchy.com/241. You can also find links to his prior appearances for Demolition Man, The Patriot, the Contact, and Big Trouble in Little China. So it's actually been quite a few episodes in a very long yet short year. I've lost all concept of time with the pandemic, but you're a good friend, and we keep in contact. Pun intended a little bit. We send spicy memes to each other, and I listen to your show, and I feel like I know you better than I probably should at this point. But you're a good guy, and I love having you on. And let's get you on the calendar for Psycho. Maybe that's an October themed episode. That would be a good one.
That's a perfect a pause there. That's about right. Yeah, about 3 or 4 months. Perfect. And you guys should come down to Texas and leave that totalitarian, dystopian, awful state of Washington, right?
Right. Well, he's already got the heat.
Bring a few Bigfoots with you.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, our Christmas cabin is called the Sasquatch Cabin, and we are going to do a Sasquatch theme. And of course, that made me think of you. So that's going to be our Christmas this year. I know it's not even July yet, but we're already thinking about Christmas. So Christmas in July.
Snobby Bobby's coming to the Daniel family Christmas. I'll tell you that much.
Hey, you're welcome if you want to come up to this totalitarian hellscape.
That was such an awkward, like, yeah, totally.
We'll just have
I
some
met this guy
foreboding.
on the internet that likes Bigfoots. He's coming up for Christmas.
I'll just start playing foreboding music before you arrive. Da-da.
I'll dress as a Sasquatch with a Santa hat on, and it'll be great for the kids.
Yeah, that'll be great. Well, this has been a lot of fun. People can find the show notes and more, and also the links for your episode at actualanarchy.com/241. And with that, we'll say maximum freedom, everyone. Celebrate your 4th of July. See if Fauci will let you put ketchup on your hot dog and determine whether it's a sandwich or not. And we'll see you guys all next week with Prof CJ for Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. And with that, we'll say peace out, everyone. Maximum freedom.
The Chipmunks. CHIPMUNK. We're the Chipmunks. Guaranteed to brighten your day. Do 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 do.